This is a strange video. Dr. Mike is generally a very respectable content creator, but he's going after RFK Jr.'s health claims. This sounds very interesting.
And someone who deeply cares about public health, I've been quite vocal about my criticism towards RFK Jr. I've said it on podcasts, on news programs, and frankly, all over social media. I know many who support his message are frustrated with our healthcare system, with our lack of clear answers to some hard questions, with our poor communication and guidance throughout.
I mean, I feel like healthcare systems around the planet are just fucking terrible. I've been trying to get a cardiologist appointment for like 3 years, and every single time I get recommended, they deny it, which makes no sense to me. I try to use my insurance, and it only works on like 90, or it works less than like 5% of the ones I actually want to use my insurance on. I had a friend who needed to go to a gynecologist, and the only one that was available to use their insurance was a guy, which, by the way, why the fuck are there male gynecologists? I feel like that shit's weird as fuck. You go in there, you have to wait for a fucking line for like hours. I called an ambulance. It cost me $6.8 thousand. Then you go to Canada, and somehow it's even worse. I don't know why it's so hard to get proper health care for our citizens, but it's just so bad to not be well in the United States. Everybody's fucking sick, and people are choosing to walk to the hospital rather than call an ambulance because that amount of money can ruin your fucking life.
Out the pandemic.
Yeah, and you're waiting 19 hours to tell you you're okay, and it's like also just like it's not even true. Like they'll write everything off as anxiety, and they'll never check you. They'll just like check your temperature and say, "Oh no, you're fine." It's like what is this, man?
Know that I hear you and actually agree with you. We need to do better, and change can't come soon enough. We certainly need to be skeptical of our institutions, but healthy scientific skepticism means following data, not cherry picking it.
I'll be real, guys. I think more people are calling Ubers to go to the hospital than people are calling ambulances. And I think that's a very, very, very destructive thing.
Or making it up. Now, before we fact check some of the more extreme examples of misinformation, I want to show you who RFK Jr. really is, what he stands for, and why, despite some of his ideas sounding good, he's incredibly dangerous to public health. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the nephew of former President John F. Kennedy. He first became popular in the 1990s as an attorney suing factories that were dumping pollution into New York's Hudson River. Good stuff. However, in 2005, he began his public crusade against mercury and vaccines, and eventually joining the team at World Mercury Project in 2015, which abruptly changed its name to Children's Health Defense in 2018, where he served as chairman and sold shirts with this slogan. In 2023, he jumped into the presidential race as a Democrat, but when that didn't work out,
I'll be real, I see nothing wrong with being anti-vax. Not in 2025. I'll be real, I have not felt the same. I have not felt the same as getting vaccinated. And the side effects of the vaccine that have been coming out only now, years after, scare the fuck out of me, to be honest. But I really don't care. You know what I mean? I can understand both sides, to be honest.
He swapped to independent. And when that didn't work out, he dropped out and backed Republican Donald Trump in hopes of secure.
Anti-COVID vax or anti-all vaccines? Oh, just the COVID vaccine. The other vaccines have helped me tremendously. But yeah, like being anti-COVID vax, yeah.
During a cabinet position. I highlight this only to show that this issue isn't left, right, or center. It's simply about telling the truth and getting accurate health information to you. Shortly after Trump took office—
Oh, that dude's against all vaxes? Oh, that's weird. No, I think modern science has made a lot of great vaccines, but the thing is that I think the COVID vaccine was fucking rushed, and they didn't really know what they were doing. And I think it's leading to a lot of downsides and health risk and issues that I'm currently experiencing. One of the side effects that I've been experiencing since I got vaccinated, like 5 years ago now, is like I have like brain fog all the time. Randomly, I'll just get nauseous and dizzy. And I did not have that before I got vaccinated. So yeah, I don't know what the fuck they put in me. I'm hoping one day I'll get fixed, but I highly doubt it. And I think I just got fucked over by Canada being too strict on vaxxing everybody immediately as a knee-jerk reaction, rather than allowing citizens to still get groceries when they're not vaxxed. And that was the only choice that I had. He's not anti-all vax. Okay, well, I'm just anti the COVID vax. It fucked me over. Yeah, I was told I couldn't get groceries unless I was vaccinated, so it just really wasn't a choice.
He assigned Kennedy to fix our healthcare system.
I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines.
But he still needed to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. During that process, he stated over and over that he is not anti-vaccine.
I am not anti-vaccine. I have never been anti-vax.
And if we listen to some of his previous statements from 2014, it might seem like he was telling the truth.
I am very pro-vaccine. I have 6 children. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated. I believe that vaccines are critical to public health, that vaccines have saved hundreds of millions of lives, and they save millions of lives every year.
Right, so this would make me feel a lot better hearing this guy talk about how good vaccines are if he didn't sound like a fucking undead from World of Warcraft. You know what I mean? Like, he sounds like he got the goofy filter on like a Snapchat voice changer.
And they've succeeded in eradicating or nearly
I don't know what's wrong with him, but man, it sounds spooky, brother.
eradicating many of these epidemic illnesses.
In fact,
that was probably one of the most insensitive things I've ever said, but I'm just saying, bro, sounds kind of funny. My bad, guys, my bad. I'm just saying he sound goofy, bro. That's my bad.
Time, his focus was mostly on Mercury, and he was honest about his lack of knowledge about vaccines.
I know very little about vaccines. What I know a lot about is Mercury.
RFK Jr., if you're watching my stream, I apologize. I didn't know you had throat cancer. My bad, man.
However, now it's
You can call me bald.
2025, and we have a decade's worth of proof that RFK Jr. is, in fact, anti-vaccine.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Remember how he just said his kids are vaccinated and he's pro-vaccine? Well, he said this in 2020.
If your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No.
In fact, I don't understand how what he's doing is not perjury. I thought you weren't allowed to lie to Congress.
I have never told the public avoid vaccination.
I see somebody on a hiking trail carrying a little baby, and I say to them, better not get them vaccinated.
He really believes kids who get even 1 to 2 vaccines are not as bright as those who are unvaccinated.
If you've ever compared an unvaccinated kid to a vaccinated kid, you see the bright eyes and the engagement and the social interactions and the curiosity and the affection and you compare them. The child even had 1 or 2 vaccines and they're completely different.
Even in a more dark analogy,
he
compares modern doctors to Nazis for vaccinating children.
To me, this is like Nazi death camp. What happened to these kids? I can't tell you why somebody would do something like that. I can't tell you why ordinary criminals participate in the Holocaust. I can't tell you what was going on in their minds, what justifications they used.
Despite all that being widely available, he was confirmed in February 2025 as the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, putting him in charge of some of the most important health agencies like the CDC, FDA, and NIH. And despite all his advocacy against vaccines, that vaccinated children are no longer bright.
This really feels like a clip chimp video. And I feel over the next coming weeks, this video is going to be dissected. This video seems very sus to me right now.
That doctors are basically Nazis, that he would happily go back and not vaccinate his own kids. He is now back to saying,
The best way to prevent the spread of measles is through vaccination. We urge people to get their MMR vaccines.
It seems RFK swaps his position on vaccines whenever he sees fit. Ironic, because many criticize the CDC for changing their medical guidance. But at least that's done in response to new scientific data. Now with him at the helm of the world's most prestigious medical entity, I think it's more important than ever to fact check some of the worst myths he's propagated.
I don't think there's any scientific question that vaccines cause autism if you actually read the science.
If you read the science, and the science is...
Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I think this guy was saying the COVID vax was great and no side effects. Yeah, I don't know about that one, man.
It's very clear on this, that there is no causal link between autism and vaccines. And there's been many studies that have looked at millions of children, comparing children who have been vaccinated versus those who haven't been vaccinated, and have seen that there is no causal link. When I was doing my debate with vaccine skeptics, one of the participants said that's because the people looking at it are part of the corrupt American capitalistic system. But then the research that was done on over 500,000 children in Denmark, which has nothing to do with the US capitalistic system, also found the same exact result. This is because there is no causal link. The only link between autism and vaccines that exists is that the timelines sort of match up from a correlation standpoint. And just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean they caused one another. The same way that we could look at this picture.
I heard that the creator, or whoever invented that theory, admitted that was a hoax. I think I heard something about that a couple of years ago. What, didn't they admit that was a hoax themselves?
Sure. Or we could look at the trending graph of organic food sales.
Yeah.
It's important to study and see if there is causation. And when it comes
Yeah, he admitted it was a hoax? Okay, that's what I thought too.
to vaccines and autism, there is no causation. And I have to say that over and over again, that this has been proven internationally. Millions of children tested to this, and this needs to be put to bed.
Because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and DNA particles.
The problem with making statements like there's fetal debris in a vaccine is that it's just factually untrue. The MMR vaccine contains 3 components: measles, mumps, and rubella. The measles and mumps components
I think we're all educated enough to know that correlation does not equal
fetal
causation.
tissue, fetal DNA, because they were made in chick embryos. But then the rubella component was derived from viruses grown in human cells. But we need to be able to get human cells from somewhere in order to have the virus replicate and be used in the vaccine. That's literally what we do. We allow the virus to replicate, we weaken it, and we put it in a vaccine so that your body gets a weakened virus exposure, not the real one, so you build up immunity and don't have to have all the negative repercussions of actually being sick. Now, for the rubella component, the cells in which the virus was grown were gathered from 2 elective and ethical abortions performed over 50 years ago. And since then, we've been reusing those cells. That's how we do science. We reuse old cells. But there is no fetal tissue. There is no fetal debris. This is just illogical coming from someone who doesn't understand how science works. It's just physically not there. And the presence of DNA particles is so tightly controlled that it's to the billionth of a gram, a picogram, because there are potential complications if there are high amounts of DNA present. It's all monitored. There is.
Yeah, this sounds like all these people who freak the fuck out over microplastics. When it's like, don't drink Fairlife milk, there's microplastics in it. But they're like, there's like more microplastics in a banana than there is in a fucking protein shake. Now, that being said, if you are worried about microplastics in your system, the way to fix it is by donating blood. I believe that's actually the only way to get microplastics out of your system. Admittedly, once I donated blood, which I do every 8 weeks, it does make you feel a lot better. It does. It's like getting an oil change for your system, is how the doctor described it to me. And yeah, I feel great after that.
There is no fetal tissue. There is no fetal debris. This is an overstatement that is made by someone who is consistently fear-mongering about the vaccine. The best evidence indicates that Dr. Offit's rotavirus vaccine causes negative net public health impacts. In other words, Dr. Offit's vaccine almost certainly kills and injures more children in the United States than the rotavirus disease killed and injured prior to the vaccine's introduction. Now, I've heard RFK Jr. say that he's really good at reading scientific research.
I'm comfortable reading science and dissecting it and discerning the difference between junk science and real science.
I don't think he does know the difference between junk science and real science. Because prior to 2006, before the vaccine was available, rotavirus, which is an intestinal virus that leads to massive diarrhea, vomiting in young children, it hospitalized 50 to 70,000 children in the United States per year.
Jesus.
After the implementation of the rotavirus vaccine from Dr. Paul Offit, those rates have fallen by 50,000. And while yes, in a developed country like the United States, the death rate was low, 50 to 60 deaths a year, in developing nations like India, where there isn't good access to medical care for many people, the deaths were much, much higher. So not only are we preventing hundreds of thousands of doctor and ER visits, we're preventing tens of thousands of hospitalizations in the US, and we're saving over 100,000 lives across the globe.
Yeah, I still think the United States healthcare system is just a fucking joke, and the hospitals as well. I think it's such a fucking scam. In case you guys don't know, my best friend's mom died around 8 days ago. My buddy wasn't really ready to talk to me about it until like 2 days ago. And then I got him on the call yesterday to actually find out what happened, because he told me there was bad news. And I actually was helping pay for the life support of Christy for a bit there, because she was more to a mom to me than my actual mom was. And I'm really glad you guys are here while I'm streaming, because it helped a lot getting my mind off it. I played some Elden Ring last night on stream, and Chad was being very kind. But obviously, I mean, I don't know if you guys can tell. I'm dealing with a lot right now. She was having some complications in the hospital, and while Edric was trying to take care of her, I think the normal blood pressure is like 70 over 120 or something. He told me that she was some like crazy shit, like 50 over 70 or some like crazy low blood pressure number. And like, it was so obvious to him that, you know, she needed to be transferred to somewhere that could help her, because for some reason they couldn't help her there. And they just said no. And he's like, why? And they just told him that he was like, you know, worrying over nothing and she's fine. And then later that night at 1 a.m., they gave him the call to find that they finally transferred her, like fucking 14 hours after Edric already asked. But by then it was too fucking late. And yeah, she passed. And it sucks because I never got the opportunity to see her. Because, you know, I was hoping that, you know, I was expecting a speedy recovery. Didn't happen. She was young too. She was only 70 years old. Only 70. And yeah, it's just really kind of fucked up, to be completely honest. And I just don't know why, when you ask the doctor that you need help, or ask the doctor to transfer them somewhere you can get help, there's any way in the legal system where they can say, no, we don't want to do that. And I just find that a little bit fucking crazy personally, because it is fucking crazy. But yeah, sorry about that, guys. This video is kind of hitting home right now, because I just thinking about the hospital is kind of fucking me up right now.
This vaccine is what a scientific miracle looks like. The fact that he's not seeing that and seeing it as a net negative, I just don't understand what research we're looking at. Throughout his book, he makes certain references to children having side effects of this vaccine. But when he's looking at the pamphlet that comes with the vaccine, he's just looking at children having conditions. He's not comparing.
Looking at children, that's like a sign of the Diddy party.
The children in the unvaccinated group to the vaccinated group, because through natural incidents,
in his words, supposedly attractive children,
kids have all sorts of conditions. Kids who were vaccinated have headaches, and kids who are unvaccinated have headaches. The question is, does the rate of headaches go up? And the answer is pretty much no. Probably the most viral claim are.
What worries me is how he says pretty much no, which means a little bit yes. That's scary.
RFK Jr. has made in his years has been tying mercury, specifically thimerosal, which is a preservative ingredient used in vaccines in the 1990s. He famously wrote an article titled Deadly Immunity that was published in Salon and Rolling Stone magazine, when a study revealed that mercury in childhood vaccines may have caused autism in thousands of kids. The government rushed to conceal the data and to prevent parents from suing drug companies for their role in the epidemic. But the article is so poorly written, it had to be corrected 5 times before finally being retracted.
Jesus.
The editor who published it literally states that it was the worst mistake of her life.
Jesus.
The ironic part was that on July 1st, 1999, 6 years before the article was written, the FDA already sent a letter to all US vaccine manufacturers requesting them to remove thimerosal as a precautionary measure. Currently, all routine vaccines recommended for children 6 years of age and younger are available in formulations that do not contain thimerosal. And to reiterate, this was a precaution.
Yeah, I'll be real. If we're injecting anything into a kid that young where their bodies are that fragile, we better be sure as fuck it's not going to fuck them for the rest of their life. I mean, Jesus, that is a very dangerous thing to really be taking lackadaisically.
Cautionary move, as no research has found any increased health risk from presence of the ingredient in vaccines. And let's run the hypothetical and say that he did uncover some sort of link between autism and thimerosal. Then we should have seen.
If bro thinks there's a link between autism and the vaccine, bro should look at the link between autism and having an OnlyFans. Because I swear to God, that's like almost a 1-to-1 ratio.
Autism rates crumble once thimerosal was removed. But that didn't happen because thimerosal wasn't to blame. And it didn't stop him, by the way, when this article was removed. He went on to write a book about this in 2014.
We are 4.2% of the world's population. We buy 70% of the pharmaceutical drugs on Earth.
We are about 4% of the global population here in the United States, but we do not buy 70% of the world's drugs. We buy around 6 to 8%. 6 to 8. That's a big difference. And some might say, well, he's talking about money spent on medications. Well, yeah, because we're usually the ones launching them first, so we have first access. But even then, we spend about 40 to 50%.
Can we all agree that the price of getting medicine in the United States is fucking insane? Like, there are some medicines that people require on a daily basis to fucking survive that cost 1,500% more than what it costs in other countries like Europe. It is out of fucking control.
Not 70.
When I was a kid, I always say this, a typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door.
No, not 1 of 3 children is diabetic in the United States. Up to age 18, 0.3 something, less than 0.4% of children have diabetes. That's type 1 and type 2. That means 1 in 300, not 1.
Maybe free healthcare would help you, right-wing grifter. Me? Right-wing grifter? Oh my God, he said the thing. Guys, this guy's a right-wing. He grifted all the way to the top. Yeah, let me know the viewpoints I've had that have changed. I know, I bet they're all very insincere and illegitimate. I will say, one of the viewpoints I have that have changed was I used to be pro-choice, but I am now pro-life. Unless it comes to rape, incestuous, or life of the mother when giving birth to a child. That's one of the things that I think I've changed my mind on. And I think 6 years ago, I was anti-gun, and now I'm very pro-gun. But that's just because I've absorbed new information. I also used to be atheist, but now I'm a lot more, I wouldn't say I'm Christian. I do believe in God, but I believe in like my own version of the afterlife. There's a word for it. I think there's a word for it. Yeah, maybe agnostic. That's probably it. Bro has seen God himself. Oh, I was hallucinating like crazy yesterday. I was sitting on this couch when I heard the news about Christy passing. And my OBS was open because I was talking to Shinya while trying to get my fucking stream set up. I swear to God, Christy was behind me while I was having that phone call. It was surreal. Same thing happened with my grandmother when she passed away. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm a schizophrenic or if I'm a shaman.
1 in 3. I mean, that level of hyperbole is dangerous.
20 years ago, there was no diabetes in China. Today, 50% of the population is diabetic.
50% of China is not diabetic. The rate is somewhere around 12 to 13%, which is still incredibly high. I mean, if someone was going out and butchering statistics like this over and over again as a resident to me, I would file a report that they need to study more, that they need to do some sort of remediation. But this is the person who's at the head, the top of these agencies, doing it over and over and over again. And people are allowed to make mistakes. I'm not about catching someone in a gotcha, but he makes these mistakes over and over and over again and doesn't issue a correction. That's a problem. Something that I noted even in my debate on Jubilee was that RFK Jr. does not believe HIV causes AIDS. In fact, in a New York Magazine interview published in June 2023, he told the reporter, nobody knows whether HIV is the sole cause of AIDS. There are much better candidates than HIV for what causes AIDS. Now, if you're trying to be charitable, you might say, well, maybe he thinks a different virus causes AIDS. But let's see.
Let's see the clip.
There's a lot of people that said it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying mainly because of poppers. 100% of the people who died in the first, of the first 1,000 who had AIDS were people who were addicted to poppers.
The party drug poppers is what our Secretary of Health and Human Services believes is causing AIDS. I struggle to coherently explain why that's wrong because it's such a ridiculous claim to make.
Can I ask you guys an honest question? Why the fuck can't we just get a president, you know, these people who represent our country, why can't we get one of them that's like not a zombie? Like, why can't they be like 35 or 38? Why are these people like 10 million fucking years old? You know what I'm saying? Like, I really wish we had somebody, you know, who just wasn't 10 billion years old, where their name is practically inscribed in the Bible because they help write it.
When we've dropped the death rate and increase the longevity of someone who has HIV because of antiviral medication, to then say that it's because of illicit drug use, just the logic is flawed on so.
Why don't you run for president? Oh, because if my League of Legends all chat logs ever get leaked, I'm never going to be able to show my face on the internet ever again. And that's just the truth, guys. I'm going to be real. 2011, 2010, 2012 Tectone, god damn, the internet could not handle how real of a motherfucker that dude was when he was going off on his teammates.
So many levels that there's clearly an HIV denialism happening here that is devoid of any scientific factual logic. Continuing on his crusade to demerit the MMR vaccine, RFK Jr. now claims that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is not very useful because those who are elderly lose their immunity.
The vaccine wanes about 4.5% per year. So that means older people are essentially unvaccinated.
That's just not true. The Lancet just did a great study on this, showing that the vaccine wanes 0.04% per year. So I don't know if he misread the study, but again, we're having this issue with statistics. And that's a very big difference because if you factor this out over someone's lifespan, 0.04% and 4% is a drastically different outcome for someone who's 60 or 70 years of age. That being said, is it possible that someone who's 75 loses their immunity despite getting the vaccine as a child? Yeah, it's possible. In fact, for some jobs, I have to do something known as MMR titers to confirm that they are immune to these conditions because they might be exposed to them being healthcare workers, as an example. But to say that it's 4.5% annually, just not accurate.
I'm not against vaccines. I've never been anti-vax. That's something that's said about me to, make me look crazy, like a conspiracy theorist. What I've said is let's have testing for each of the vaccines to make sure that they are that they're safe and effective. Vaccines are the only medical product that is not safety tested prior to licensure.
I feel like they just cannot be true. There's no way they're just completely untested.
And we need.
But I still think the COVID vaccine was rushed out way too fast.
Placebo-controlled trials.
Like the COVID vaccine was rushed out so fast. There was like 5 different ones that you could get, each with like a different flavor of side effects. Like I remember my ex-wife wanted the vaccine because one of them had a side effect where it made their boobs grow bigger. Like that was like how goofy the amount of vaccines that were rushed out worked. Y'all remember that shit? It was like what, like J&J or some shit? Y'all remember that? Yeah, y'all remember that? Yeah. Yeah, insane side effects? Yeah, I know. I'll be real. Like, I felt like I couldn't breathe for like 5 days after I got vaccinated. Yeah, there was like Pfizer, J&J, some other shit. Yep. There's a lot of flavors. Me personally, my favorite flavor of vaccination is Happy Juice. Get it at gamerstuffs.com using code BALDY for 10% off and free worldwide shipping. Maybe, I don't know.
Trials.
I can't believe I have to educate the person who's in charge of the CDC, FDA, and NIH, but vaccines do undergo placebo randomized controlled studies. COVID vaccines ran through tens of thousands of people in randomized control placebo trials. When you have a completely new vaccine, you're doing placebo randomized controlled studies. But if you already have a vaccine that you know the safety profile for, and you know that it works, so you've tested it, now you no longer need to test it against placebo. You only need to test it against the new version of the vaccine. Then you can compare the safety rates, the effectiveness rates, and he says that this is somehow different than the pharmaceutical industry. It's not. The pharmaceutical industry works in the same way, that when you have a novel medication, absolutely you do randomized controlled studies. But when you have a new medication that works in the same way, you can compare it to the standard of care. And the reason that we do this, scientifically speaking, is because it's unethical to withhold treatment in a randomized placebo-controlled trial when you know something works and is beneficial. So what we do is instead, we randomize into two groups. One group gets the existing vaccine that we know the safety profile of and the effectiveness, and we compare it to the new one. Vaccines are incredibly well tested. In fact, they're more well tested than pharmaceuticals because they're given to people who are healthy. We have a higher threshold for side effects in pharmaceuticals because those people are actually sick and have an issue. But when you give something to a healthy person, you have to have a higher bar of safety. That's why we have the Vaccine Safety Data Net that actually monitors vaccines after they've been administered. And this is to the tune of millions of doses of vaccines. The fact that he said that they're not tested is, again, the crusade of trying to discredit vaccines. Then came the beef tallow oil.
Yeah, I think cigarettes are really good for you. You want to know why? Because when I smoked cigarettes, I felt really good. And then after I stopped after 5 years, I felt really bad. Yeah, so I'll be real, man. I feel like cigarettes like just make you better. Personally, I've never felt better when I was smoking a pack a day, down in a full throttle energy drink 3 times a day. Once I stopped, I just felt terrible. So yeah, I'll be real, guys. I feel like nicotine's the cure.
Literally, Charlie Kirk tweets that RFK ate steak and
Great, I'll
shake
start smoking.
on live TV, the fast food joint
Big dub.
that's bravely frying everything in beef tallow.
And the best thing is, it makes you look cool. Beef tallow is healthy for you. Oh wait, is it? That'd be cool. Just ate steak and shake on live TV. The fast food joint that's bravely frying everything in beef tallow. This is the way. I will be real. Steak and shake is fucking delicious. Just to be completely honest. And now I want a burger so bad.
That is the way, Maha.
I used to work there,
We are
man.
poisoning ourselves. And
one
it's
day.
coming from, principally these ultra-processed foods. And what we're trying to do, and this President Trump wants us to have radical transparency and to incentivize companies like this one to...
Although I think advertising a fast food restaurant as healthy is just the immediate straight road to bullshit.
switch to traditional ingredients like
But maybe he was just making the argument that it's healthier than frying it in oil.
beef tallow.
Oh, by the way, here you go.
We're talking about making people healthy. You're eating fast food. And I'm not villainizing fast food, but if you're gonna be
I am, bro. Fast food is such a fucking scam, guys. Cook your own food. That's the only way you're actually gonna know what you're putting in it.
talking about making substantial improvements to the health of the United States, you should be talking about removal of those foods. In fact, it's not the chemical, it's not the oil that's the issue. It's the fact that we're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. The Maha report that was just put out a few days ago talks about the overconsumption of ultra-processed foods, yet they're eating it as an example, celebrating restaurants that are serving the thing.
When I was a kid, McDonald's was made with tallow fat. That was good for you. Your body needs that. It makes
I don't know about that one, dude. Yeah, I really don't know about all that.
you healthy.
Can you imagine saying McDonald's fries make you healthy as someone who's in charge of a health agency? I mean, he's just fully making things up. In America, we're over-consuming saturated fat. We're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. His own report states that, and yet he's celebrating fast food, celebrating how McDonald's used to fry their foods in beef tallow.
Almost all of the Falconers who I grew up with in the Hudson Valley have serious problems now with brain fog and with other symptoms of Lyme disease. And the idea that this
Yo, chat, type one of you have brain fog if you've never felt the same since the first time you've had it.
may have been is highly likely to have been a military weapon.
It's highly likely that this was Lyme disease as a military weapon. Is with 100% certainty wrong. 60,000 years ago, there's traces of Lyme disease. We have ticks preserved in amber from dinosaur days because they fed on dinosaurs. So the fact that he's extrapolating all these thoughts that have no scientific basis is really scary.
There are plenty of studies that make it clear that SIDS is caused by vaccines. SIDS really appeared following the first vaccine.
There are no studies showing that. The reason some people have considered an association is because of the timing. A lot of the first vaccines are given at 2 to 4 months of age, and SIDS peaks at 2 to 4 months of age. So people thought that there could be an association. And when research...
Well, according to the Denims, as long as like a baby dies before the age of 4, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to remember it, so it's not tragic. So yeah, honestly, Dr. Mike, I would bring this up with Denims because she says it doesn't fucking matter, to be honest.
Has studied it. We have seen that there is no relationship. In fact, if you truly look at the data, you actually have seen in the research that if your child is up to date with vaccines, you have a lower risk of SIDS in some instances. And notice how I'm hedging it. It would be really easy based on the strength of that association for me to say vaccines decrease risk of SIDS, but I don't because I'm honest to the data in saying that there is some preliminary evidence showing that keeping up to date with vaccines can lower the chance of your child having sudden infant death syndrome. But RFK sees two things happen at the same time. He doesn't even care what the evidence shows. He just says that they must be causing one another. Many people who are frustrated with our healthcare system for being too reactive and not preventive forget that some vaccines are preventive for not just regular illness, but also cancer. More specifically, the HPV vaccine, also known as the human
I ain't putting nothing in my body called the quadrivalent human papillomavirus type 611 1618 recombinant vaccine Gardasil US Goplik Knock 2. Hell no, bro. That's just gonna turn me into a fucking Megatron.
Human papillomavirus vaccine.
What the
Because that
fuck?
virus actually ends up causing cervical cancer. So by getting
What the
kids
fuck?
vaccinated, we actually
Bro, that's how that dude became Static Shock, is injecting that shit into his heart.
have seen a tremendous drop in cervical cancer rates. That didn't stop RFK Jr. from tweeting and currently leaving this tweet up. Gardasil HPV vaccine appears to be increasing the risk of cervical cancer in vaccinated
Oh, well, that
age
can't be good.
groups. I'm gonna ignore all the COVID stuff because we're not talking about that. Let me give you some data. Sweden, from 2006 to 2017, it's almost 2 million girls and women. 63%.
The fuck does that mean, girls and women? Oh, does that mean like young women? Okay. All right. So like young girls and adults. Okay.
Lower risk overall. 88% lower risk when you start the first dose below age 17. England, around the same time frame, 87% lower cancer rate. Multi-country meta-analysis done by the WHO, 50% drop in high-grade lesions within a decade of the program starting. In the United States, done with the CDC, with the National Precancer Surveillance Center, 80% drop in cervical precancers among 20 to 24-year-olds. It's just so obvious to see that the data is clear. When you vaccinate against HPV, specifically the high-risk subtypes that can lead to cervical cancer, you see a drop in cervical cancer, in precancerous lesions. And RFK not only doesn't see it, but sees some sort of risk that no other scientific organization in the globe, not just in the US, can see. How are we gonna get to the
Yeah, but maybe he's the one who's right. You know? What if everybody else is wrong except for him? He's the main character. You know what I mean? Like everybody else is crazy except for our GOAT RFK. He's the chosen one. So it turns out 8 million scientists were wrong. But this one 85-year-old skeleton, he's the knower. He escaped the Matrix, man. He did. He escaped the Matrix.
bottom of making people healthy if we don't do the research? We're firing scientists, we're slashing budgets by hundreds of millions of dollars. Who's gonna be doing the research? I just don't see a plan here. There's a lot of political speak, PR.
Please stop. People will believe that. Okay, well, here's the thing. If they're already so dumb to believe that very obvious joke, they're already this far gone, bro. Why worry about them?
Stunts, promises that will
At Grok, is this true?
remove certain dyes from kids' foods as if that's the problem. No, the issue is the ultra-processed foods. The issue is that obesity is going up. Those
At Grok, make RFK Jr. naked.
are the real problems because that impacts all parts of our lives. Entrusting all of that to someone who makes statements like this
We should not be giving black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites.
is scary to me. Our health agencies cannot be led by someone who repeatedly denies the very science they're charged to uphold. Secretary Kennedy's long record of spreading vaccine falsehoods and undermining proven public health measures makes him a clear threat to millions of Americans who rely on accurate guidance. Certainly,
I bet you he's going to say RFK Jr. can't be trusted. and then he's never going to suggest an alternative. Everybody says what's wrong, but nobody says how to fix it.
He should have never been confirmed to head the office of HHS. But choosing to leave him in charge is like handing the keys to a driver who continues to insist that stop signs and red lights are optional. For the sake of our children, frontline health workers, scientists, and every family that deserves accurate healthcare guidance, we must demand his immediate resignation. Normally at this time, I would recommend you to click here and watch another one of my videos, but not today. Instead, I'm asking my American viewers to click the link at the top of my description to find out who your representatives in Congress are. From there, you can contact them via phone or email and join me in calling for Secretary Kennedy to resign from office. If you're not sure what to say, I've even included a few sentences you can copy and paste into an email or say over the phone. I can't do this alone. I need your help. And as always, stay happy and healthy.
I knew he wasn't going to suggest anybody. So I'll be real. I think like 80% of those clips were out of fucking context and clip chimped like crazy. RFK Jr.'s probably had some pretty bad takes, but like, let's be real. Are we really going to go after the guy for the beef tallow thing on burgers? Listen, I am far too uneducated to actually know the inner machinations of their mind. But that being said, that seemed like a 100% out of context clip chimp video. That's just my opinion. Let me know what y'all think. It was at least interesting, and it was nice hearing about all that.